Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. I had a bit more time for projects this week, partly because I am now getting caught up a little bit on the work I have for that new job, which is nice, gives me a bit more free time. And the other reason is we just had our first major dump of snow. It was well over a foot, and I don't like to go driving during the first big snowstorm because for some reason people seem to forget how to drive from one winter to another, and I really didn't want to go out there and play bumper cars with them. So what it is I front loaded my week and I got as much work done as I could, so if the snowstorm happened I could take the day off. And as it turned out, both worked out quite nicely that way. And well, I have a bit of time here, so I'm going to do a bit more work on this spindle sander. Now, my original intent, as I mentioned in the first video, was to turn this down to round, and then what I could do is just take adhesive backed sandpaper and just wrap it around that, put a clamp on either end just to hold it in place more securely, and then basically just whenever it wore out, undo the clamps, peel it off, and just keep on doing it that way. But as I was working through this, there are, obviously you can buy spindle sanders, and of course they have replacements for those, and you can just slide them over, and I'm not sure exactly how they hold them on, but what I can do is I can turn it down to something, well, pretty much as close to friction fit as possible without, of course, having issues getting it on and off. And then that would be a much simpler way of doing this because the problem with using adhesive paper on this is you could end up with that seam, and that seam could catch, and then it would tear. And long before, the sanding paper is worn out, I'd have to replace it because of that tear. So what I want to do is I'm going to glue this all on here, and I'm going to turn this down to round, just down to round, just so that it is as big as possible. I'm going to measure what that is, and then I'm going to check on the internet and see what kind of replacement drums there are and what sizes they are, and we'll go from there. So what I'm doing here, as you can see, is I took all those discs, I've used the new CA glue with the activator, stuck them all together, and clamped it down in place. And also, I'm doing another way of recording this. I'm doing it in 2 times instead of 4. It shortens the amount of time it takes to show you the stuff, but I think it also still leaves a fair amount of clarity in what's going on. It's not as jumpy as 4 times. Let me know in the comments below what you think of that. I think it looks nice, and it certainly seems to get everything done in a reasonable amount of time. So there you go. This is all now solid. And the other interesting thing for using the CA glue for this is I want to test it out in a much more, less friendly, I guess I should say, format. As this turns, those corners are going to catch on the tool, and it's going to cause a fair amount of vibration. And if this thing is going to have issues with that, then this is the best time to catch up, because I do want to use this for the table saw fence, and this is a good way of testing it to see if it is actually solid enough. So that's the plan here. I'm going to test this out, and as you see, I've now gone up to 2 times, and I'm going to just turn this down to, like I said, just round. And as soon as it's at that point, I'm going to sand it just to keep it reasonably smooth. And then the other thing I'm going to do is you can check here right now, if you look right down where the jaws of the chuck are holding on to the spindle here, I'm holding it on at the 1 inch because I don't want this to have too much in the way of deflection. So what I'm doing is I am using the most solid part of this, and because this is at the point where this will be under the most stress. So I'm going to keep doing it this way until I get it basically down to round, and then the last clip you'll see will be, I'll move it out and it'll be onto the 1/2 inch shank, which is what's going to fit into my Jacob's chuck for the mill. And like I said, the reason for doing this is to make sure that this stays as true as possible, because I would like this to, when I have it on the mill, turn nice and smoothly, so I don't get any of that chattering or bouncing around, which is another reason for testing it out this way. Because I remember I also mentioned in the first video, another thing I want to do is put together basically a disc sander rotating drum, not drum, but a flat surface that rotates like a record player, and use that for doing some other types of sanding, because I don't like sanding by hand. It's long and boring. So here I've switched it out now. It is at the 1/2 inch shank, and I'm just doing very, very light passes here. I just want to make sure that it's all nice and smooth. It came out actually really quite well. There wasn't really much of a difference between the inch shaft and the 1/2 inch. It worked out really quite well. There isn't much in the way of run out on my lathe, but again, it's always best to make sure. So I'm going to take some sandpaper here, and I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. And then that's basically all I'm going to do today, except I want to take this and I want to put it on the mill, put it in the Jacob's chuck. When I originally got the mill, I bought a high precision chuck, mostly because obviously you should use other types of things like collet chucks and stuff like that for doing a fair amount of machining and milling. But for some of the lighter stuff, I like to use a Jacob's chuck because it is much simpler to change things out. So there you go. It's not obviously smooth, but it is round now, and this is the maximum diameter. So I took a measurement off of that. It happens to be just a little over 2 3/4 inches. And I had a look on the internet, and I can find 2 inch. I'm going to look for 2.5, and we'll see if I can find it. If not, I'll have to turn this down. So the nice thing about this, as you can see, is it spins quite true. I'm not going to stick my fingers on this because it's still quite rough. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think of this. And in part 3, I guess, we'll get some sandpaper and we'll test this out and get it working. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you next video, and bye for now.